there's this thing in the industry known as the sophomore slump. I'll be honest, Bad Idea, right? I'm not a huge fan of.
I feel your compliments like bullets on my skin. This writing shows duality and complexity of human emotion.
Why fix something that's not broken?
I have a theory that Sour is about her relationships with other people and Guts is more about her relationship with herself. Welcome back to the Share Your Screen podcast. My name is Nicky.
And I'm Coco.
And this is episode 10.
10?
Double digits, baby.
Oh, wow. Thank you guys for sticking with us.
And this week, I am going to be the one presenting, and I am presenting about Guts vs. Sour and which one we think is a better album, and also to compare from a lyrical analysis and how we see her career moving forward, because I think she has this really magical aura around her right now of being the youngest face in pop, and I think in the next 5 years, she is going to be a name of the likes of the Taylor Swifts and the Ariana Grandes. And I'm really fascinated too in just breaking down why her specifically has had this career trajectory that feels almost impossible. I also think she was one of, if not the first artist to break through to mainstream Met Gala level through TikTok, which is something that's really fascinating to me, because I think everybody talks about how she was on a Disney show, yet most people don't know she actually never signed with Disney. She never signed to Hollywood Records. So she did it all through TikTok and independently, and then got signed to Interscope, which is something I'm really, really excited to dive into. But what are your thoughts on Olivia's career and also these two albums?
Yeah, I had a close eye on her because so many artists, there's this thing in the industry known as the sophomore slump.
Yep.
And even the best artists who have had these huge careers, oftentimes their sophomore album won't be as good as their first, and sometimes as good as their third and their fourth and their fifth. There's immense pressure on them. I think that there's this desire to stay, why fix something that's not broken? And so they stay so close to what they were first known for, but then it doesn't help them evolve. And usually the sophomore album comes out years later and then they're dated.
Yeah.
So I think that she, in a weird way, was able to nod to her past self, and yet she has such a different kind of punk style now that we can dive into. And just the rollout of her songs, I'm excited to talk about, because from a marketing perspective, I feel like she took two opposite approaches with the rollout with Sour versus Guts. I don't know if it was intentional, but I have thoughts. I
really view these two albums as two parts of the same whole in going to a visual standpoint. The album covers look pretty, I think, intentionally similar.
Yeah.
The first is clearly this very young girl. It's this light purple color. She has stickers. She's wearing a skirt. It's very young. It's very feminine. Then the second half of this whole is the Guts cover, where it's still in front of this purple seamless, but it's a little bit darker. And now she's not wearing the super hyper feminine girly outfit. She's kind of a little sexier and a little more mature, and becoming a darker purple is an intentional creative direction decision to show age and maturity, almost this purple has aged as she has aged, having that sort of more pop punk sound to it with the darker tones. I don't know. I think it's very, very intentional.
She's a Pisces. They're good at that.
Are they?
They're very artistic. They see things like they put little hidden messages in their visuals, not just the music. Yeah.
Right. And it's even more than that to me is her lyricism.
Yeah.
I think when you think about a lot of artists, they are known for really different things. When I think of Beyonce, I think of a performer.
Yes.
She is an iconic artist, but her on a stage is unlike anything any artist does. Really,
she could turn do re mi fa sol la do or whatever into the performance of a lifetime.
Right. And when I think of Olivia, I think of the way she writes.
Yes.
And I also think too, when I was watching a bunch of interviews and stuff, doing research for this video, it's really cool how when people ask her about the songs or ask her about the album, she'll be like, this one was really fun to write, or I really liked writing this, or which is interesting. It's interesting to think of music as a written form before even an audio form.
A poem.
Yeah, it is literally, it starts as a poem, or it starts as an idea that needs to be translated into a poem and then has music put to it.
Well, did you hear that she took a poetry class? Does that come up?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So there's some TikToks where I think she was talking about it in an interview, but she during the creation of this album, she took a collegiate course, a poetry writing class.
That's awesome.
And was like in Zooms with like college kids in a
so
class.
Much sense.
Yeah.
Because so much of her lyrics are riddled with metaphor and antithesis to describe like the mixed emotions of being a teenage girl in 2023. Things like describing relationships in her lyrics as the Swedish torture. This use of antithesis reminds me of Charles Dickens. Iconic lines like, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. This writing shows duality and complexity of human emotion. And on the surface, we describe things in a very linear way. I am happy. I am sad. I am angry. Literal. Yet emotions don't really function that way. You can love someone and hate them at the same time. In fact, you often love someone and hate them at the same time because in order to feel that deeply of negative emotion, there has to be this positive correlation that got you there in the first place. Or you can be jealous of someone and happy for them. You can be sad that something is ending, but excited that it's over. And I think that we don't talk about emotion in that way, yet when it's portrayed through her lyrics, it's tapping into this very complex and almost illogical thought patterns that we all feel, where they're so specific, yet she doesn't always try to make sense of them. And when I hear criticism of Olivia's work, I feel like this is the point that they're always missing. It's things like, this is just another whiny ballad where she's complaining, or she describes these girl problems about being young and then later contradicts herself, saying people take advantage of her for being young, but she doesn't want to be young. And I think what people don't realize is like, that's the point. Like, you're not supposed to make sense of your emotions fully, or you're not supposed to like be able to understand them in such a black and white linear way. I also think people have this misconception that like you should only write a song about a feeling if you have the answer, or like write about a story if the story has a conclusion. And that's not how life operates. Like everything is fluid, you know, and changing. And that's really what I like about her too. Even like when I break down some of like the lyrics from this album, like in Lacy, she says, I feel your compliments like bullets on my skin.
That line stood out to me.
I love that kind of writing. Like it shows that, and I think being a young woman shows that like there is kind of always this backhanded natureness of like being complimented is seen as a good thing, but it's also like because your only worth is based in your looks. You know what I mean?
I even took it too as like a frenemy, like someone who you're not sure where your relationship stands with them. Like you're kind of like hot and cold, and then that like elation that you feel when you're like at a pregame with friends, and then that one girl who you're on awkward ground with like compliments you, but then on the drive home you're like, wait, was that actually an insult?
Or like, oh my God, you actually look so good tonight.
Like you actually got dressed up for once. Like you're like, wait. And I think she captured that perfectly.
Totally. And I think that, again, like that's the point that people are missing. Like there's not a concrete answer to that. But that's kind of why I like her music. Like I like that it's bringing attention to things that we feel that don't have a correct response. You know what I mean? Because that's like, at least to me, like that's the shit worth reflecting over. Like that's the things we should be thinking about more.
And when it's multidimensional like that, you can relate to a lyric when you first hear the song, and then it's timeless because 5 years later, you maybe interpret it in a new way now because it was open-ended and it wasn't like something that was, I think a lot of songs now, especially with the pressure to go viral on TikTok, are so one-dimensional and literal because they're like trying to like have the label tries to have a formula to go viral, and yet she kind of flips that on its head.
Or you can tell they're trying so hard to like make a 15-second clip of a song translate out of like the 4-minute song,
and it has to be so literal, and like, people have to make like a dance move with it. Like
absolutely. So like I don't know, like before we discuss like which album we like is better,
quote unquote,
I view them as like they have strengths in different ways. Sour has higher peaks. Like I think if I were to list my 3 favorite Olivia songs, 2 or 3 of them are probably from Sour, but I think I like Guts, the album, better.
My theory about Olivia Rodrigo's marketing strategy, I could be right or wrong, I don't know, is I feel like with Sour, and maybe this was intentional, she had a really aggressive single release. So like Driver's License came out, and it was so much energy was put behind that. And then Deja Vu. And she had these very intentional singles. I actually think Jealousy is like the best song.
That's a good one.
I love it because she's like yelling, which then we see come out in All American Bitch. But I felt like Olivia had to be really strategic with the singles for Sour because it was her introduction to the world.
Yeah.
Whereas I almost feel now with her Guts rollout, I feel like she's almost been a little bit pulled back with the singles. Like, of course, you had Vampire and Bad Idea Right, which I love Vampire. I mean, I'll be honest, Bad Idea Right, I'm not a huge fan of. I'm still a fan of Olivia. It's a pretty common take. It's just not my vibe, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be. But her album really so much stands on its own that I almost feel like with Guts, it's like, I don't need to push a ton of singles from this. The singles are going to push themselves. Like, she didn't push Lacy as a single, and yet Lacy is the one that everyone's fixated on. And I think she was almost had this like maybe a confidence too, where it's like, I'm just going to let the album stand on its own. Whereas as a freshman artist, you have to be so intentional with those first few songs to get people interested.
Totally. I also wonder if there was like a weird pressure with like the whole love triangle of Josh,
the first
Sabrina,
one.
and Olivia. Like, even if she wanted to release Deja Vu on the album, like after Driver's License was such a hit, I'm sure they were like, you need to do Deja Vu. Like, you need to. Going back to Sour as an album, actually Driver's License specifically, I would love to just like hone in on that song. Because I think that song, Driver's License, perfectly encapsulates the feeling of what it is to have your first love as a teenager, where it feels like it is the most serious thing on planet Earth, but it's so not. And I think even reflecting on Driver's License 3 years later and thinking about the drama that happened, it's not a big deal. Like, I think the internet really perpetuated a narrative, and like, it's sadly common. Like, I think people, when they break up, like a lot of people like are thinking about it for a while, or they know that the relationship is on rocks, and it takes them meeting someone new to realize like this thing isn't the thing for me anymore. As someone who has both been in the receiving end of that and of like the giving end of that.
And I feel like Driver's License, I know she gets compared a lot lyrically to like Taylor Swift, and both of them are really good at making songs that people associate with certain ages. So like that one was like when you turn 15 or 16 and you get your license. And to me, Driver's License, kind of what you were saying, but it really captured this thing that happens when you're younger, where you have these certain milestones that you hit. So it's like expedited between like 16 and 23. And you have moments where you really love someone and then it falls apart. And you almost are like, why is my life continuing? And like these milestones are still happening. And this person that I thought would be there to celebrate them aren't. I think that was like, even just like driving down their street and stuff. Like, it was so interesting.
And it's funny because I feel like driving down their street is like such a teenage problem. Like,
I know, right?
Teenage, you know, like in adulthood, you don't really.
And if you do, then you need
maybe you need help. You need some help.
But it's something that like teenagers do. Like it's something they do.
And it's something that like, I also think interestingly, the thing about teenagering versus adulthood is like, when you're an adult, it's really the first time you get to choose who your friends are and choose who your relationships are. Like, so much of your school years, so like high school, middle school, college, is defined by proximity. Your friends are who you have classes with, or who's in your major, or who's also on campus on Tuesdays, so you get lunch together. You know what I mean? And when that proximity isn't there, then the only people you're left with is the people you are making a conscious effort and decision to be around consistently, right? Like, we both work 40 hours a week, and like, we're tired, but like, I want to spend my time with you. Not just necessarily because we're like within a 500-foot radius of each other.
If anything, we're like driving 30, 40 minutes to like hang out.
Exactly. And those milestones really make up so much of your identity. Driving is like your sort of your independence. Then you're leaving your house at 18. Maybe you're going to college, and then maybe you move. Maybe you get a job. Like, so many things happen and you change so much that you seek stability in relationships.
Yeah.
If everything's moving 100 miles an hour, I want at home to be moving 0 miles an hour. I want that person there. And I really felt like that's what that song captured.
Whereas I also want to say too that I think that Guts was also more focused on her sense of identity. Like there were songs about relationships, but it was like something that also you deal with in your early 20s where you're like, who am I? Like you try on different hats. And I think that even like the song All American Bitch, which maybe we'll get into, but I think that like it's so interesting how one album was so fixated on the deteriorating of relationships in teenagehood. And now this album is like one more so the intensity of relationships when you're in your 20s because it's so different. And also the intensity of figuring out your identity.
I have a theory that Sour is about her relationships with other people and Guts is more about her relationship with herself. Because if you look at the lyrics, like I'm going to describe, there's 4 songs that really stand out to me on Guts that identify like her relationship with herself and also her relationship with societal norms.
Whoa.
So like first is Lacy. And that's one that I think like the fandom has really been talking about. Like, she describes things like, you are the sweetest thing on this side of hell. And I love that, again, that antithesis describing
we're in a bad place.
We're in a bad, or feeling like you're in a bad place herself, but like seeking this light at the end of the tunnel, that lighthouse. Or I despise my rotten mind and how much it worships you is like such a powerful thing to me. Like when you just know someone is bad for you or has done terrible things to you and you can't not think about it. But what stands out to lyrics like this is she's not talking about them. She's talking about her. Sour was really like, and songs like Deja Vu and Driver's License was like about their actions. Do you get deja vu? Do you think about me? Whereas songs like Pretty Isn't Pretty or Teenage Dream are about like, when am I going to stop being great for my age and just start being good? Like when are people going to evaluate me on things more than just my age? Like it's her having this deeper reflection. And that's why I view these albums as like, again, like 2 parts of the same whole.
Yes. It's almost like Jealousy. Jealousy was like, in a way, her blaming other people for her feeling bad, but then Pretty Isn't Pretty is like her blaming herself now. Like realizing like maybe it was me.
Oh, I think Pretty Isn't Pretty is a metaphor for society. I also think this has so much potential to be like the best music video on the album. Like just because the message of the song I think is so deep. There's always something in the mirror that I think looks wrong. Is such a real experience. Like the longer you stare at yourself in the mirror, the more you pick out like wrong about you. And or even times too, like I can think of, I'll literally be scrolling through my camera roll and see pictures of me from 6 months ago and I'll be like, I visibly remember thinking I looked terrible.
And then you're like, oh, I would kill to look like that.
Yes, literally. And like it's because again, like there's no so you can't win. It's quote, it's in my phone, it's in my head, it's in the boys I bring to bed, it's all around, it's all the time, none of it matters and none of it ends. Like I think that's talking about this idea, like society puts this pressure, again, so much of it is based in looks and like materialism. And I think that Pretty Isn't Pretty is a metaphor for being pretty. There is no definition. It's a subjective concept even. Like this idea of perfection.
Even the prettiest person isn't pretty.
Like pretty or the prettiest person thinks that someone else is prettier. You know what I mean? Like you think Beyonce's beautiful, Beyonce thinks somebody else is pretty. You know what I mean? Like it's just a never ending thing. And it's crazy to think about that so much of our society is built off subjective concepts. Like music. Like art, like looks, like what is perfect to me, what is a perfect song to me is not a perfect song to you. What is a attractive man to me is not an attractive man to you. And that doesn't make one of us right or wrong. It doesn't make it bad. People have different views of beauty. And I really felt like that song captured that so well. And that's why I really think, again, like I think it would be such a compelling music video. Like I can just even like see in my mind like the creative direction of her like staring at herself in the mirror, and then like the camera pans into the reflection, and like maybe she's like really like wearing tons of makeup and looking beautiful, but then once you see the POV of the mirror, her staring back is like her without the makeup and her with all these blemishes and acne spots, where it's like even when I'm on stage and all these people see me and they think I'm beautiful and a performer, like what I think is like, oh, they don't know underneath all this stuff. Like, I look like this.
You know, it would be such a good music video for Pretty Isn't Pretty. from Olivia Rodrigo is there was this old Twilight episode back when Twilight was like black and white.
Okay.
Like this might predate you.
It does.
Only people born like before 1997 would know this, but there was a Twilight episode and the whole thing was this woman felt like she was so ugly and she was signing up for like all of these surgeries and stuff, and everyone was like so shook at how ugly she was, but you never saw the other people's faces. You just heard what they were saying to her. You saw her looking in the mirror, and her reading magazines, things like that. And then the plot twist at the end of the Twilight episode is the camera pans out and it shows everyone else in the room who had been telling her she was ugly and she needed to change it, had all of these like weird face deformities and almost looked alien. And it was but she was a normal human. Like she looked like a beautiful woman. And it was saying like she was like conventionally attractive the whole time, but she was in a world of people that looked to what we would perceive as not beautiful. And it was just this mind F of like, oh my God, it was the environment she was in that she felt ugly.
Whoa,
and they cast like
that
this beautiful
would be
woman.
So good to spin on that.
She
for
did
the
a
music
nod
video.
to
and
that.
It captures this idea that beauty is subjective.
Yeah.
So much of what society puts its deepest pressures on is subjective.
Exactly.
Like it's so weird. Like why do we have, as human beings, have such a fascination with things that don't have concrete answers? You know,
that's exactly why, because we'll never get the answer.
I think
the moment you get the answer, you're like, oh.
There's discourse. It's always a topic of conversation, and maybe that's why it's timeless.
Yeah,
because you can't. It's a problem that can't be solved. So people eternally discuss it. I guess. I think the most underrated song on the album is "Teenage Dream."
Okay.
Absolutely love. I think it describes the frustrations of being young, and also really hones in on the concept of ageism.
Yeah.
And I think ageism is something that people think like corporate.
Yeah.
Like my boss is 35 and I'm 20 and they think I'm dumb because I'm 20 and they don't take me for what I'm actually worth or the work that I do. But I think ageism applies so much to relationships. Oh. Especially like where people are like, you're so smart for your age. Or like, you're so blank for your age in any capacity is a wrong sentence.
Yeah.
People like feel there's some sense of superiority with age of like quantity of experience, so to speak. But I think that anytime you think you're an expert in something or you know more than someone, like the only person who can suffer from that is yourself, because now you're closing yourself off from the opportunity to learn something new. Yeah.
As Wendy Williams used to say, she's lived a life, honey. And when she would say that, she was referencing like someone who's like 25. One 25-year-old might have lived a life worth 50 years of experience. And then another 25-year-old born on the same day, they might have only lived a life of 10 years of experience.
Yeah.
Some people have lived more life, like they've lived a life, and it kind of aligns with that.
Totally. Honorable mention, Get Him Back. I think I love the double entendre of that song.
Yeah, like
where
like don't even want him, like why do
it's like get him back means revenge,
like revenge,
but
like,
also means get him back, like I want him.
Yeah, like why are you still vying for his attention even if it's in a revenge way?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think again that's what people don't talk about. Like relationships are messy.
Yeah.
The feelings you feel are not linear.
And you don't understand your feelings all the time, and that's okay.
And that's and I love that she sings about that.
Yeah.
She sings about the ambiguity.
Yeah.
Not about a solution.
Yeah.
Or a way to feel. Because I think when you talk about the confusion or the lack of a conclusion, that's something everyone can relate to. Whereas when you hone in on a specific outcome, that guarantees you're cutting off X portion of people, right?
Yeah.
If Get Him Back ends with her getting back with the guy, then there's 70% of relationships or whatever where people broke up and they didn't end up getting back together. So by leaving it ambiguous gives this artistic interpretation to the audience.
Yeah, I love that.
You can internalize it the way you want to internalize it, or the way it would apply most to your life.
Yes. One of my favorite songs on Guts is Ballad of a Homeschooled Girl. And I think that it might not have even been intentional, but I think it applies to so many people, even if they weren't homeschooled, because I always feel so deeply for people slightly younger than me who had the rug pulled out from under them when it came to schooling, like not being able to go to prom, not being able to go to graduation, like not being able to live in a college dorm.
I didn't walk my college graduation.
Not ever having to really have experienced corporate life, but like being able to make friends at work. Like
totally.
So many people had that pulled out from them.
I also, whenever I've talked to people who have like been in corporate for a long time, and I tell them like, I felt robbed of that.
Yeah.
Like I have never in my life had my own desk. Yeah. And like I just wanted it. I don't know. Like it's dumb. I wanted a stupid little name tag and like I wanted to be next to 2 coworkers and like I never had that. And I know that it's not fun.
Yeah.
But when you're told since you're 5 and you see your parents doing it since as long as you can remember that like you're going to do this, then this, and your life will be this way.
Yeah.
And then that outcome isn't there.
Yeah.
Even if it's a negative outcome, you're like, it's so disorienting to not have it. And especially again, like I moved 2,000 miles from home when I got my first job. So like I was in a new city in COVID, completely locked down. And you didn't have that sense of community and that sense of proximity to people.
Yeah. And it's like that sense of being ostracized, and like her situation is so unique and she is ostracized. But I think it's like so many people now relate to that feeling of being ostracized or an outsider. But if everyone's an outsider, is it really what's happening? Or is it like also just society shifted so dramatically in a short amount of time that really no one's equalized yet? Like no one has an equilibrium yet. Like we're all kind of outsiders.
I have a theory. Olivia Rodrigo planned her albums Sour and Guts to be 2 parts of the same whole. And Teenage Dream, the song at the end of Guts, is actually like the end of the chapter. And that she has these hidden Easter eggs from the first song on Sour, Brutal, where she also says the words, quote, "I'm so sick of 17, where's my fucking teenage dream?" That is the start of the chapter. The end of the chapter is the song Teenage Dream, the last song on Guts. Why do I think this? Teenage Dream, I think, represents like her childlike sense of wonder. The teenage dream is that feeling. It's this bubble you experience. I have a theory. Olivia Rodrigo is about to completely ditch the color purple and rebrand into red.
What?
And I have a few pieces of evidence to support my theory. To start, it all goes back to what was the first single she released for this album? Vampire. What does the album cover look like? Black and white with a very, very slight thing of purple. I think the purple represents her childlike innocence and that wonder of her being a young, creative person. However, Vampire, it feels like she's been drained of that color because the life was sucked out of her, literally. And what is the one thing repairing her? This one piece of childlike innocence she still feels like she's barely holding on to. Let's go to the second single, Bad Idea, Right. What is the text? Red. This video has so much red in it. Red is the dominant color. If you look at the lips of every single person in the music video, they're releasing red lipstick. If you look at the uniforms of the cheerleaders, they're wearing red. If you look at any of the text that pops up on screen, it's the color red. If you look at the costumes, if you look at Olivia's necklace, if you look at the color of Olivia's ring, everything is red. There is a clear transition from purple to red. She's intentionally putting the color purple and the color red next to each other. So then we get the end of the music video where she's finally pulling up to her ex-boyfriend's house, and she's on the way there. In the bus, she gets splashed in the face with a red Slurpee. Like red is just hitting her in the face. And I think red is meant to symbolize like her next chapter, right? Like that's why it's hitting her in the face. It's an abrupt like coming into who she is next, right? She then steps out of the bus into the rain to her ex-boyfriend's house. She's wearing a light purple sweater. She then takes it off. What is she wearing under the light purple? Red.
Wait, what?
She then gets into her ex-boyfriend's bed where she's laying there. She slowly pans out. There's fire, red fire next to her. Also, all of the things on the floor that are in the boyfriend's apartment, red. So I am convinced that she is dropping these Easter eggs and that either her next single or like next album, something like we're going to see the first time she steps away from this purple color and it's going to be red as the primary color of her brand. So my theory is that Teenage Dream at the end of, we're going to get a music video for it eventually. Yeah. That music video is going to be a visual representation of like that bubble shattering, that purple teenage dream, that teenage journey that we started with, starting with Sour and ending again on the teenage dream, will change, and she's going to rebrand into a different color. My theory, red.
Which crazy you say that, because we made that video and then like not a week later, she went to the VMAs and
wearing
wore red on
red.
stage.
Wearing
and it was
red.
so crazy.
I know, and I'm telling you, I think Olivia pulls a lot of stuff. She studied poetry from literature. So much of her influence in writing is from literature. The color red has so much symbolism in literature. Red commonly depicts this idea of a mature woman. Don't quote me on this, believe my English teacher actually told me that this was because centuries ago, they used red to define womanhood because when a woman had her first period, that was the transition to womanhood. So since that, they've used the color red as like symbolism for womanhood. One of the best examples I always think of, like where they talk about red in tandem with women, is like the book The Scarlet Letter.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not the violet letter, it's not the green letter, like it's the scarlet letter. It's talking about adultery, and that's like her, her sin as a woman. And like we can, or
even in Handmaid's
very
Tale,
misogynistic, like in nature, but
in Handmaid's Tale, they wore red robes to like show that they were the fertile ones.
Yeah. And then pink or light purple is often used to symbolize like a young girl character.
Yes.
So like the common iconic pink young girl I think of is like Elle Woods from Legally Blonde. Like even in movies, they will intentionally, like if you see a girl in all pink, she's like a bimbo. You know what I mean? Or she has this youthful ignorance, this youthful unawareness about her. And what they do in literature is it starts where maybe a young girl starts as like a pink, like she's wearing a pink dress, blah, blah, blah. Then she has this deep traumatic event or like life experience. And after that, she's depicted wearing red throughout the rest of the film. And things like that are designed to give a visual to an audience of like, this person started out as a young girl and through this experience has matured into a woman. That's like the symbolism of color theory. And different colors actually represent a lot of stuff in literature.
Yeah.
It's a really, really fun thing. We could do an entire episode about that.
I know, right? Day. Even subconsciously, pink is red, womanhood. With white involved, and white is purity. So it's the dilution of red.
I didn't.
And the moment you get
about that,
and the moment you get rid of the white purity, the pink color increases into red.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah, I also, something you said, it gave me kind of like a theory. Based on your analysis, I kind of theorized that Olivia Rodrigo's titles of her albums specifically relate to what you were saying about how Sour is about her external relationships. And sour, when you eat something, if it's sour, you have a very outward expression. Like,
or I think that sour means like she felt sour about what people did to her. Yeah,
that too. But it's like you're having like a visceral reaction. Like someone can read it on you. But guts only happens after you've consumed something. And you don't see it physically. Yeah, no one knows that you might not even know you're gonna have a reaction, but once it starts like going through your intestines, then you might have, like, it might poison you, but you don't know it immediately. And it's almost like the sour is her deflection of experiences and guts is her absorption.
Like the internalization of the
internalization.
It's so deep, it's in her guts.
Exactly. Yeah. So
that's really, really interesting. I love that.
She might have chose those titles intentionally.
I hope so. And if not, that she should have. Like, that was good. You really ate with that one.
Yes. Our email's in our bio. And if you want to come on our show and talk about it. Like,
exactly.
Yeah. It was great.
So like out of the two albums, which one is, if you could only listen to one for the rest of your life and you had to pick Sour or Guts, what would you pick?
I would pick Sour because I love the song Jealousy, Jealousy.
Really?
And it just like isn't overplayed yet. Like, I mean, Sour is so popular that both of them will be overplayed. That just happens to pop stars. I think that there was something so interesting about Sour. It was her first album. And maybe it's more so just a familiarity bias. Yeah. Because Guts is so new. But I think Sour captured such a special moment in time, and we're too close in proximity to Guts on the timeline to understand its impact yet.
Yeah. I also think there was this, like, hearing Driver's License for the first time in like peak pandemic was like a feeling that we just will not ever describe.
We were coming out of like not really having a ton of new music.
None.
Because we just went through the pandemic.
They can produce. Yeah.
And she was the first, like, I feel like real...
January of 2021, literally like the first.
Exactly.
Yeah. And also I think she kind of paved the way for TikTok music success secretly. Like, it's so fascinating to me that she came through the Disney pipeline, but didn't lean into the Disney avenue. Like,
yeah. And also someone commented, I think on maybe your viral video about the theories, but that partly what was so hard for specifically Miley, Selena, Demi, that kind of generation that I grew up with, almost all of them had some forms of PR crises before they were able to fully become a musician that was respected. And, you know, one time is bad luck, 2 times is coincidence, 3 times is a pattern. It was like, what is happening here? Olivia didn't really have that, or at least, knock on wood, she hasn't really had it yet. But someone said in one of the comments, maybe it's also because there was more of a cultural magnifying glass on that first generation of stars coming through Disney. Yeah. Whereas of course, the 100 million views on YouTube and High School Musical, the musical, was really big, but it wasn't the same as what Disney Channel was.
As Hannah Montana.
And so I almost think that there's more flexibility as someone who's mending themselves to be a public figure when they're actually not in the limelight, where she was able to maybe make decisions that she was able to sign with Interscope instead of Hollywood because she didn't have all these Disney handlers around her.
Yeah, and I also think that Miley going through what she went through so publicly really set up the latter half of Disney stars for success in a way, because they never fell into the trap of signing their life away to Disney. Yeah. Think of Zendaya, think of Jenna Ortega, think of Sabrina Carpenter, think of Olivia Rodrigo, huge A-list stars now. And they never fell into the Disney pitfall. Yeah. And I think it's because literally, I think Miley going through that saved people. Like people realize like, whoa, like this is your future if you allow a company to box you into being a perfect like teenage girl for forever. And by all of them being smart enough to say, I'd rather take a risk and bet on myself and not sign my life away to Disney to have autonomy and decision making in my career, is what launched them. Like, you think they would have allowed Zendaya to be the lead of a show like Euphoria? I know. If she was signed to it? No way. No way. So like it really saved her and like saved her career. And I think that, I hope that like Miley thinks about that, or at least like realizes that like if she didn't, I think, go through what she went through so publicly, like somebody else would have. Yeah.
And like personal anecdote here too. Obviously so different, but funny enough, some of the people on our podcast know, like, I used to work at BuzzFeed, and I'm only speaking for myself. I know you did, but speaking for myself, I started at BuzzFeed, but prior to me beginning, I saw so many videos about why I left BuzzFeed. And even though
I watched them all, like, before I even had my first interview.
And I have really nothing bad to say about BuzzFeed. I always had a good experience, but even though I had essentially the keys to the kingdom, I was signed in to all of their main accounts, 20 million followers. And I had permission. I could have posted videos of myself. And I actively for 3 years chose not to ever put myself on video, because I knew that one day I wanted to have a podcast. I wanted to have a following. And the moment that I made my identity where I worked, the moment that I left that workplace, I would lose that following, and I would always be associated with my job that I got when I was 21. And so I knew that it would be a harder and longer road to not align with one of the biggest media companies in the world. But I did that so intentionally because of the people that came before me, who kind of laid out the roadmap of, this was what was great about it, this is what was bad about it, these were the pros and cons. Like, and I really took those warnings, and I'm really grateful for everyone who did talk about their time at BuzzFeed before I began. Or else we wouldn't be in this room.
And going back to the Miley comparison, if they didn't talk about that publicly, you wouldn't have known.
I would have no idea.
You wouldn't have known. So sometimes, again, like, and also like weird life lesson out of this, I think, like, if you go through something, even if it's negative, sharing that experience with people can save them from going through the same experience. Like, if you make the mistake or you suffer an unfortunate consequence, like, by sharing, hey, this happened to me. This is why it got to this point. If you see yourself getting to this point, you need to take a left turn.
Wait, what do you think is the best album? What do you think is better, Sour or Guts?
I think my favorite Olivia song of all time is Deja Vu.
Okay.
Like, I just, the feeling of watching someone that you used to be with someone else is like ugh. Like, I think like one of my worst traits as a human being is that I'm just really jealous.
Yeah.
Like, it's really just like a bad trait.
Or maybe
that
like
I have.
competitive. And so you're just like, why? Like,
and I struggle with that feeling of like, oh, if they're happy with this person and they weren't happy with me, it's because I'm not enough.
Yeah.
Not because we just weren't the person for each other.
Yeah.
I really struggle constantly with internalizing that, like in all things. Like this earlier this year got broken up with for the first time in my life. Like I'd been in relationships, but like I was the breaker upper. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it destroyed me. It was like,
they broke up with you, you're saying.
Yes. Yeah. And I felt worthless. It was literally the first time one of the first times in my life, like I just felt like, I was like, wow, like I felt like I did everything right. And I wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And that's not true. Like, I know that's not true logically, but that's why I love the song Deja Vu so much. Playing that feeling of watching somebody with somebody else.
Yeah.
And feeling like, do you get deja vu? Like, do you think of me? I don't know.
Or even like those milestones, like when Halloween's coming up and you're like, oh, like in my head, we were going to be like a couple's costume, but like there with someone else. Like,
right.
Yeah. So are you saying that you like sour better?
Oh, sorry. I just did not answer your question at all. I think I like Guts better. Okay. I think it's so rare to find a genuinely non-skip album. Yeah, like like Harry's House was like one of the first albums I ever listened to that was like I could listen to this start to finish and not feel the need to skip a song. Mm-hmm. Like genuinely, I felt like the worst song in the album is like a 7 out of 10. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I feel that way about Guts. Like my least favorite song is probably Bad Idea, right? Mm-hmm. And I still think it's good. Like, I don't hate it. So I really admire Guts for that. And I also like that she's like bringing back pop punk.
Yeah, she is. Like
I want the Avril Lavigne's. Yes. I want Hayley Williams. Where's how do we get them on the deluxe version or something?
And I do love with like her new Guts album, I will say, you know me, I'm obsessed with like just juxtaposition and like dichotomy. And when someone is so opposite of what's expected, and like I think with All American Bitch, for example, like you would think that the label would have a formula like, okay, you want to go to the pop punk route, like where's your side bangs, where's your eyeliner, where's like your hand like little those thingies little, that they would wear,
bracelets with a little metal spike,
exactly, like where's your DC shoes, like, and yet she delivered this pop punk sound and has this preppy kind of like skirts and
very feminine.
Long hair and like feminine. And I think that is what's so much more viral or interesting to people versus following like a formula. And I think that's also what stands out is like aesthetically, it's so like she's just very kind of like preppy, at least now. Maybe she won't be in the future. And I think that if any other artist went to their label with a song like All American Bitch, they'd be like, okay, like, where's the stylist? Like, let's, like, where, like, we need to cut your hair.
Where's the electric guitar?
Exactly. Like, we need you to, like, wear, like, huge black boots. Mm-hmm. And she stayed true to who she was aesthetically and vocally went in a different direction. And I think that was really interesting.
That's a great way to put it.
By the way, this is what it sounds like to sit in the car with us for, like, a 30-minute drive.
Because I felt like this was the most, like, unscripted episode we filmed. Like,
I know.
We just kind of talked. Yeah. So I hope it was interesting. I don't know.
Yeah, let us know in the comments. Let us know if you guys want us to do a similar style video for other artists. Like, I'd love to do this with other artists' albums or eras.
Yeah. So. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Music or wherever you listen to your podcast, please give us 5 stars.
Yes.
And help so much. And if you're watching on YouTube, we love you. Give it a like and subscribe, please. Yes. And thank you for supporting us always.
Yes, I heard that like the 1-star button is broken. Like,
yeah, so it actually only works if you press 5. It's actually 5 years of good luck.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, reviews help. Following us on YouTube helps because we've been like actually growing faster than we thought in terms of subs, and like we're just so grateful for every single one of you guys. And if you guys want us to make a Discord where we can talk about these things even more, I would love to do that. So should we start it and then we'll put it in the description?
You know what? If you're seeing this, there's a Discord.
Go to the Discord. It'll be there in the description, and we can just start talking about all these crazy things that like you don't want to annoy your friends and family with, like the third text of the day about Olivia Rodrigo's like music video or something.
Exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you guys so much. This was a great episode. Thank you, Nicky, for making it. Yeah.
Oh my God.
That was good.
All right. Bye, y'all.
Bye.